area of Hebron, and it says right here in verse number 1, he journeyed thence toward the south country and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur and journeyed in Gerah. Now, Kadesh and Shur, he kind of went between them. And Abraham, understand what just happened was the cities of the plain, well, they disappeared. They were burnt. Hellfire, brimstone, like a volcanic ash and everything, the explosions and the death of every man, woman, child, animal, everything. And he is now leaving that area, which he was not there. He was maybe 10 miles or so away, but he could go about 5 miles up and see from this mountaintop where he met with the angels. He could see all that valley. Well, that has happened, but Abraham now has maybe, I don't know, up to a couple thousand people with him and his servants and all of that and all these animals, and they're eating up all the grass and everything. So his job that God gave him is to tour the land. and that's what he's doing, because God's giving him all the land where his feet are going to walk. And so God has done that. Now, what he's done is he's left Hebron and he's moved around down to the south. Shur is a wilderness where when the children of Israel came out, they came out kind of through that area and were lost in that area for a period of time before they moved back on up. And Kadesh is just a little north. Well, where they have moved to now is just south of Gaza today. And so last week I did something, I kind of got off pace, and so let me go and if you want to, I'm going to give you a little bit of history of Israel. Not Abraham's Israel, that's 2000 BC when we're talking about Abraham. But we had the judges and we had the kings and then on through. Israel was a mighty nation at one time. David and Solomon reigned, and they had just taken over the place. The great kings of Israel at that period of time. But Israel did what most countries do. As they gained in dominance and this, they began to leave God out and get back into the world. What's the world doing? That's what we want to do. And that's where we see America today. But one of the last kings was Manasseh. Manasseh reigned for 55 years. He was the worst king Israel ever had. You know what abortions today, we have like 65 million kids. They talk about, well, rape or, folks, when you have 65 million, that ain't rape and incest. That's just irresponsible people. Basically, it's the same as the god Molech in the Old Testament, where they would offer children to this god. And that allowed them to go on and they didn't have the worry with children. Now they can go and basically those days they were caught up in sex. I mean, they had men by the temple that were with other men, and you could go visit them, or they had tents where the women were, and you could go visit them, and right at the temple. I mean, why not? You know. And so that's what was happening back in, that's what's happening here, of course, today. But this is what happened to Israel, and Manasseh was terrible. He brought that inside the temple. And then God said to him, I'm going to take Jerusalem as a man taketh a dish and wipe it off and turn it upside down. And basically he's saying Israel is done. And so but then what God did was amazing. He gave us one of the greatest kings Israel ever had. He was called a son of David. His name was Josiah. he was prophesied 300 and some odd years earlier by name. When Jeroboam built a golden calf, God sent a young prophet up there to tell Jeroboam, you should never have done that. And Jeroboam put his hand out, and all of a sudden it turned leprous. And that prophet gave the name Josiah, is going to come back here. So 300 years later, Josiah did go back there, dug up the bones of the priests and burn them all. But he also run into the tomb of this prophet and asked about it. And it's amazing. Josiah, 8 years old, Josiah started, his father was Amnon. He was a wicked king. He was Manasseh's son. He lasted 2 years, and the servants killed him. I mean, he couldn't even handle his own servants. But his son was Josiah. At 8 years old, he became king. At 16, he began to seek the Lord. At 20, he began to cleanse the land of Israel. At 26, he cleaned out the temple and had the temple worship reinstated. And he had Jeremiah and Zechariah, as he went through the north country, tearing down the altars. Jeremiah and Zechariah would go along with him and set up places of worship in each one of these little towns up in the north country before he come back down into Israel. He died at age 37, but he was Israel's greatest king. His sons were terrible. Israel went into captivity in 587 BC. Israel ceased to become a nation. Their people were scattered and killed. Daniel was one of the first batch to leave. He went over into Babylon. He and, of course, the 3 other Hebrew children with him, and many, many others. These were the wisest men in Israel. Ezekiel and his group left after that in the second diaspora. And so they went into captivity for 70 years. During that period of time here, there's something that the temple has never had since this period of time. That's the Ark of the Covenant. Never did have it again. They did set up a holy place in the Holy of Holies. They never had the Ark of the Covenant. It's still missing. It'll be brought back into play one day. But anyway, Israel ceased to exist as a nation at this period of time. They went away into captivity for 70 years. God let them back out. And Ezra and Nehemiah built the wall. Ezra built back the temple. And they began to worship God again and set that up. But they were always under the thumb of another nation. They were under Babylon rule here, then the Medes and the Persians, and then the Greeks, and then the Roman Empire took over during the time of Christ. At 70 A.D., over 1 million Jews were killed in Jerusalem, and the temple was destroyed. 70 A.D. They were under Roman rule at that time, and the Roman ruler Titus, or Roman general Titus, came in and encompassed the city. And actually they were having at the time, the reason the city was swollen with so many people, they were having the Passover. And they let them in. And then after they were all in, and they came in, and the army destroyed over 1 million. Took, 100, 200, 300,000 as captives. But something else happened later. At 135 A.D., a Roman emperor named Hadrian. There's some questions, if you study him a little bit, there's some questions he had this young kid that followed him around a lot. He committed suicide, and many believe that Hadrian was a homosexual king. But whatever, he hated the Jews. I found that people that are evil hate good. People that are evil love lies and hate truth. It's just the way they live. They have to believe in lies, and lies have to become truth to them. That's why when you witness to or you talk to some of these woke individuals that we have today, which I think there's more than a mental problem with them, but when you talk, you can't reason with them because they're possessed. They can't, unless God opens their heart, they will never understand. They believe lies, and anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. So 135, what he did changed the world. Hadrian, and you hardly ever hear about this. Hadrian, what he did, he hated the Jews so much, he went in and killed another 500,000 Jews. What he did was, he changed the name Israel. And what we're studying of Abimelech was the king of the Philistines. Israel's greatest enemy throughout the years when they came back into the land was the Philistines. Dan was on the northern part of where the Philistines were, and Judah was on the eastern part, and they never did conquer the Philistines. Hadrian named Israel what? Palestine. Palestine. I believe Israel is still fighting Palestine today with the Gaza and that group that are there. It wasn't until May 14th, 1948 that changed. But at the turn of the century, what was happening during the late 1800s, the early 1900s, what was happening was there was a man named Theodore Herzl. Theodore Herzl was a political activist, and by that time, the Jews were in Slovakia and Russia and were over in those areas, some in America, and they were scattered around the world. Theodore Herzl gathered some men together, and what they wanted to do was find out where can Israel become a nation again. We are a people that are scattered. And so they were working with international leaders and world leaders and trying to find out and get a piece of land that Israel can be Israel again. Well, they were offered some place in Africa. They selected that. They said that wasn't a good idea. This was around, Herzl died in 1904. 1860 to 1904. He was a political activist, and he began to get Zionism. He was the father of Zionism. And now they have a Zionist movement trying to get a place for Israel to live, to stay. And so what happened was, as they began to gather people together, there was a lot of arguing. You never have politicians that agree on anything. And so, but what happened? World War I, and then World War II, and the Holocaust killed 6 million Jews. That brought a sympathy for the Jews. Not a lot, but it brought some sympathy for the Jews. At the time, the Ottoman Empire owned Israel, Turkey, and that area. But another event happened, and England gained control of Israel. Now, England and America would not help Israel. They were wanting to come and take back their land. 1944, the end of the war. Now we're coming in 1947. Israel is working to get their land back. They couldn't buy guns and ammunition from America or England. So they're working under the tables in Yugoslavia and Czechoslovakia and areas like that to get weapons that they can use to fight. In America, they had a young man that had some abilities. He was a pilot during the war, and he began to buy up old wrecked airplanes. They wouldn't let him buy airplanes to fight. And he would buy up old airplanes, and he had gathered some people around him, and they get some money in different places, and they begin to build these airplanes, and then they would fly them around and pick up guns and ammunition in Czechoslovakia and across Slovakia, and then they would fly them into Israel. Well, they caught him one time, and they put him in jail in 1950. But he was one of Israel's great men. After he got out of jail, he went up and set up a lot of great things in Israel. Israel got a handful of guns, a few airplanes. And Ben-Gurion went in, and Golda Meir was there during that time, and others. And they had the 7-day war, and they gained back Israel May 14th, 1948. President of the United States, within 10 minutes after Israel declaring they were a state, he recognized them as the state of Israel. Even though America didn't vote on it for a while, they recognized it. J. Frank Norris, I have a book and has letters that he was writing back and forth to the President of the United States saying Israel belongs in that's their land. And he would prove it biblically. So, what has that got to do with our lesson today? But I hope, Bill was asking me about this last week and wanting me to clarify a little bit. And there's a lot more than all that I'm giving you, but this is how Israel became a nation again. And they were not a nation from 587. They were a people living within, under the thumb of, and actually they lost that here in 135 AD. So Abraham is now in Gaza. We're fighting war. They're fighting wars in Gaza today. So I've got 10 minutes. I hope that helps you.
Amen. It's a blessing.
If I was to get into prophecy, I believe God's clock started May 14th, 1948. If you watch history today and study the Word of God, Ezekiel 38, Ezekiel 37 was them coming back as a nation. Ezekiel 38 and 39 is a great war is going to be happening. And it's going to be with Russia and China and Iran and all of these nations are going to go up against Israel. And right now, Israel has a war. I have a friend that his family is in the north part, which Hezbollah is in the north part, firing missiles off in from Lebanon into Israel. Syria has been coming in and fighting Israel up to the east side. Iran is coming has furnishing all of the enemies with the weapons that the United States gave them money to purchase, and they are within minutes, within a week of putting together a nuclear bomb. So we are very much living very on the edge of the last days. Very much living on the edge. Yemen, the Houthis. Who ever heard of Houthis before? And they're firing things into Israel. And they're causing all kinds of problems. Israel is fighting all around them. And they still just have a handful of people that are fighting. They're amazing. They're an amazing, amazing people. Pray for Israel. I don't care whether you like them. Well, you better like them. Now, I'm not saying that they're Christians. They're Jews. I don't even know how many of them are God-fearing people. Herzl, that started the Zionist movement, he wasn't a God-fearing person. But God has a people. Well, Abraham has made it now around to Gaza. And he does what he did 20 years earlier when he went into Egypt. He told his wife, you say you're my sister, I'm your brother, and we're going to look it out. And yeah, I keep asking myself, where did this come in? But understand, this is 2000 BC. This is not a time or land that we would ever understand. And these people were unique. And if Abraham had daughters, he would have probably offered a daughter to the king. And what that did in that time, Solomon was good at this. Well, he got a little bit better at it than he should have. But by marrying into a king's family from another country, joined the countries together. Israel had a queen. Did you know that? Athaliah. This is what happened there. The northern kingdom of Ahab and Jezebel married off a daughter to Judah's king's son. And when he died, after they were already dead, Ahab and Jezebel were gone, she took and tried to kill every one of the Judah's kings that would have been in line for the throne. But one of them got slipped away as a little baby. She lasted 8 years. But that's another story, isn't it? I'm off and chasing rabbits again. But Abraham did this, and I don't know why. I think it just was one of those things that he was afraid, he said. Now, one of the things that bother me about this is, where does it say that he prayed to God and asked God's blessings on this? And we don't see it. So we're going to, if you'll get into your notes, and I'll just read through them, and we'll just go real quickly through the notes. Abraham, if you remember in the first part of this chapter, Abraham has went there, and if you remember, Abimelech had a dream. And the dream, I can imagine, he's laying out here, and all of a sudden in his dream, he hears this word, behold! You are but a dead man. Oh, I think I would wake up. And then God informed him that he took Abraham's wife. And he said, I didn't know it. I'm not guilty. He says, I know you're not guilty, but you better give her back or you're going to die. And so this is the repercussions of that. He has now confronted Abraham and said, wait, what did you do to me? I'm a good man. This is a righteous nation, he said. Oh, I wished our country, we could say, was a righteous nation again. There's more to being a righteous nation than having a church on a corner. So now where we are, Abraham said, because I thought surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. Well, why did he go there? There's a lot of questions that I have, and I look at this, and you'll see Genesis chapter 12, verse 12, where he did the same thing with the Egyptians. And he said, yet indeed she is my sister. She's the daughter of my father, not the daughter of my mother. She became my wife. You got that figured out? Terah is his father. Terah had 2 wives. This wife had Sarah, and this wife had Abram. And Abram married Sarah, His sister, again, folks, 2000 BC. You know, David had a daughter from one wife, a son from another. The son raped the daughter. And the daughter said, if you will go to my father, he will allow us to marry. So she said, you will be as one of the fools in Israel because of what he had done. Well, Absalom took care of that. Absalom went in and killed him, so that was the end of him. But that's what happened. Okay, we got 5 minutes, unless Charlie's bell's ringing wrong. So when it came to pass when God caused me to wander, God caused Abram to wander. That was God's way of getting him out and giving him the land. My father's house, that I said unto her, this is thy kindness. The Abraham and Sarah established right after they got married that because they were brother sister, they could, wherever they would go, and this kind of a situation come up, they had already pre-planned this. Then you're going to say, you're my sister, and they won't kill me to get you. She had to be a beautiful woman. This is 90. This is 90 years old or so here. And verse 14, Abimelech took sheep, oxen, men servants, women servants, gave them unto Abraham, restored him Sarah his wife. This is where Hagar came during the Egyptian time. And Abimelech said, behold, the land is before thee, dwell where that it pleaseth thee. The Egyptian king says, here's your wife, here's a bunch of money, and here's a bunch of men servants and women servants. Get out. Now Abimelech said, hey, you're God's man. Hang around a while. Anywhere you want to live. Now in next chapter, I think verse 22, Abimelech's had enough and says you need to leave because Abraham's getting bigger than he is. And he said unto Sarah, behold, I have given thy brother 1,000 pieces. And notice he says brother, not wife. Because he did not take his wife, he took his sister. He did not say, I'm bringing back your wife, I'm bringing back your sister, is what he's saying. I took your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of eyes, and all that are with thee, and with all. Some say that this is so they will buy a veil and put over their face so this won't happen again. I don't know. You can read my notes. There's a lot of things that I like to give you things that other people say that helps. I could copy, but I think they call that plagiarism. I try not to do that. And Abraham prayed unto God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his men servants, and they bare children. Here's the verb that's used here is this. It could be both sexes. So the belief here is that God not only shut up the wombs of the women, he caused the men not to desire the woman. So I don't know how long Abraham was there. Could have been a week, could have been a month before this was found out. Actually, in chapter 26, Isaac's going to do the same thing with Rebekah. I don't know if you can believe that or not. But we're going to see that when we get to chapter 26. But I don't know what God did, but whatever it was, he stopped them from, having children. And the Lord had fast closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because Sarah, Abraham's wife. Sarah's going to have Isaac soon. God is not going to allow anybody to touch Sarah but Abraham. Sarah's got to have Isaac. Isaac will have Jacob. And this goes all the way to Mary and Joseph. And Jesus being born. So that line, even though when you try, and the Bible is such a beautiful book. Beautiful book, how God interweaves. And every time somebody tried to stop the line, it didn't work. They would steal one little baby away and put him in the temple for a while. It just didn't work. Okay. Next week, next chapter. Oh. Good morning. Father, we're grateful that you've given us this time where we can meet together and learn from thee. Pray that you'll bless, Lord, this service. And God, just use us today to honor you. Bless Brother Matthew as he brings the morning message. Just give him power and a holy unction, Lord, in Jesus' precious name.